So I started off this morning by talking about the fact that 99% of Ireland's exports by volume go by sea. So I'm really delighted to introduce to you now Lieutenant Commander Gerard Menihan from the Irish Naval Service, who will talk about the journey over the last 3 years on 50,001.
Okay, thanks, Conor. Firstly, I suppose I'm here to talk about Naval Service energy management. It's probably difficult for an audience to listen to the last speaker of the day, so I'm going to keep this on a relatively second last, my apologies. We're late in the day. So I'll try and keep this on a practical footing. I realise that a lot of the, let's say, academic or systematic elements of ISO 50001 have been repeated multiple times today, so where they do crop up, I'll keep them to a minimum. But what I want to talk about really are, I'm involved in Naval Service Energy Management for the last 6 years. We've had ISO 50001 accreditation certification for 3 years, so I want to talk about the lead into the certification and what it's meant for the last 3 years. To give a little overview on that. So I'll setting the scene. I'll talk a bit about the Naval Service and what we do. As I've said a number of times today, and it's particularly you can particularly see it when you head up the country, maybe up the Midlands, to a funeral of a colleague or a colleague's father. The amount of people in this country that don't realise we have a naval service. So from that point of view, I'll just set the scene and give a brief outline of what we do. I'll talk about the issues facing the Naval Service and our response from an energy perspective and what it's meant to us. So, as an arm of the Defence Forces, we're the primary maritime agency of the state. We're tasked with defence of the state. Drugs and smuggling interdiction is our more constabulary role. We provide services to government departments such as the Gardaí, Customs, Coast Guard, Department of Fisheries and Department of Transport. We also have a role to play in maritime pollution and safety of life at sea. And I suppose the one aspect that's becoming more and more relevant is the Naval Service are being tasked to provide platforms abroad for Irish industry to sell their wares or to exhibit their wares in diplomatic functions. So that has a big impact on our energy consumption. So most people will recognise this as being the map of Ireland. From a naval perspective, we consider this to be the real map of Ireland. It defines Irish territorial waters, the EEZ, and various other claims that Ireland has lodged with the United Nations with regard to territory at sea. It's approximately 1 million square kilometres and beyond, and statistically some of the most hostile seas in the world. It also defines our significant energy use. So, marine gas oil or ship's propulsion diesel makes up 85 to 90% in any 1 year of our annual energy use. To put it in a different perspective, as an arm of the Defence Forces, it makes up 35% of the complete Defence Force energy consumption. So it's fairly significant. And because of that, I'm only going to talk about marine gas oil usage here today, given its significance in our context. So why did we pursue an energy agenda or an energy management agenda? Well, back in 2007, 2008, if you can remember, the price of crude oil was approximately $140 a barrel. It peaked at that and it dropped away again fairly rapidly. But the consequence for the Naval Service was that the following year's devolved budget, 50% of which would have been eaten up with marine gas oil at those prices. So it was a risk. It became a significant risk and remains a significant risk going into the future. I suppose since the peak of the Celtic Tiger, defence budgets have been reduced. Our jurisdiction, there is potential for an extended jurisdiction for the Naval Service, and that defines our area of operation. We've had increased international commitments from the point of view of commercial functions abroad and, I suppose, operations with Partnership for Peace countries. That has driven our energy consumption up. And at the time, the introduction of new larger patrol vessels was in the offing. Now, the reason for new vessels was quite clear. Our vessels have a nominal lifespan of 30 years of age, and most of our vessels have reached that or are over it at present. And as for the larger patrol vessels, The North Atlantic wave systems have statistically, the wavelengths have been increasing, which makes it more difficult for our ships to operate in, so we needed to extend or make larger the sizes of our ships in order for them to operate effectively and efficiently, and from the point of view of crew safety and comfort. So these were the challenges facing us. So the options were to reduce our ship numbers or reduce our personnel numbers, which wasn't viable from a naval service perspective, as every organisation tries to expand its footprint. And reducing our commitment coverage, this wasn't an option, as a lot of our commitments are defined by government, so we don't have the flexibility to decide on the coverage. The alternatives, and it's a bit of a cliche and has become more so in the last couple of years, is to do more with less. So energy was one of the areas in which we looked at doing more with less, and what it meant at the time was to improve in the short term how we manage our ships. In other words, to implement an energy management system. And looking more into the future, it was to innovate through our partnership with CIT and UCC and the Irish Marine Energy and Research Cluster. And further to this was designing our ships with alternative propulsion methods and better stabilisation. So from an ISO 50001 perspective, I've broken it down simply into what it is, which is plan, do, check and act. I know our friends from the Aviva Stadium have already used this today, but so from a planning perspective, we had the realisation that our new ships were in the offing, and this would have driven up our energy consumption dramatically as energy moved up the priority list. We needed the new ships. I suppose the rule within the Defence Forces is that energy considerations do not drive operational needs, so the ships were going to get larger. We had to follow suit with regard to energy efficiencies. To give an indication as to where all this stood, this is a clip, this is an old clip from 2011. What you can see at the red line here, this is what has become the government targets to 2020. And in the Defence Force context, it's been defined as an absolute energy reduction of 33% by the year 2020. There's actually, there's a scale missing on the left-hand side of the screen, but what it amounts to is 100 gigawatt hours as our annual consumption in 2007. The blue line indicates our consumption, our actual consumption to 2011, with projecting for 2012 and 2013. That was our glide slope to meet our 2020 targets. The orange line and the blue line are representative of the addition of 2 new ships and 3 new ships respectively, which would have meant an energy reduction of 9% per annum in order to meet our 2020 targets, and this was certainly not viable. So we looked to reduce our energy consumption in short term. We did this by training for key personnel, which initially started out as engineers with a certified energy manager training as defined by the Association of Energy Engineers. We looked for our Naval Service Command buy-in, which we had, because it was very easy to sell them the energy management agenda, as it would implement, I suppose, reductions in our spend and would buffer us against any future budget reductions or oil price rises. The big key to this, though, was the shift from technical to operational lead. The way I describe it is, from an engineering perspective, implementing the energy management agenda is like pushing a rope. By getting our operational people to buy into it, they in effect pull the rope and pull the whole of the Navy with them. As I said earlier, our operations accounts for 90% of our energy consumption. On the back of this, Naval Service Command did take the decision to implement a structured energy management system, which was, at the time, would have been EN 16001. I suppose this clip represents how we built it into the Naval Service Command system. What we can see at the top of the screen there is the Flag Officer commanding the Naval Service in HQ, and the rest of the screen, with exception from the very right hand side, which is the Energy Manager, which is me, is part of the Naval Service Command structure. The Naval Service Energy Manager is the only addition. So the energy management structure is slotted seamlessly into the Naval Command structure. And it's one benefit a military system has, you have a very defined command structure, a very defined reporting structure, and it's very easy to get things done if the command buy-in exists. We carried out our gap assessment to see where we could make our best savings. From a data point of view, operating in the marine space, the legal requirements are for every 4 hours for propulsion data to be recorded and kept. So we were very rich from a historical data point of view, and given the military command structure, we had a very good and very tight reporting system. So a lot of what we needed to implement the energy management system was in place already. The analysis that followed suit defined our significant energy users and our legal and other obligations. I suppose our significant energy users quickly became our ships, our 8 ships in the naval service. So from a ship's perspective, anybody with a sharp eye will see that the 66 gigawatt hours isn't the sum total of what you see on the screen. It's just a mix-up in the slides. But the P20 class of vessel, which was our older class of vessel, was due to be phased out and is being phased out over these couple of years. Because the North Atlantic system is a fairly violent, North Atlantic is a fairly violent place to operate, and that's representative of what we deal with regularly. The ships had to become bigger, had to become more robust. Thus, the P20 class of vessel, because of their age and their size, had to be phased out to be replaced with what we now have as the P60 class of vessel. Apart from being bigger, it also includes alternative propulsion systems such as electric drive and tank stabilisation to allow the ship to operate at slower speeds more efficiently, but also with a lot greater stability in our area of operation. I suppose our check and balance as to how we were proceeding, we looked at our alternative navies, and to look at the US Navy, we considered things such as LED lighting, the stern flaps on the ships, electric propulsion, tank stabilisation, and find that the US Navy and the UK Navy are also using a lot of these systems. We didn't implement LED lighting because of cost-benefit analysis. We didn't use the stern flaps because at the speed we'd be operating, it would be more of a drag than an aid to efficiency. So from the doing point of view, compliance with policy and directives was one of the areas we looked at. Again, this was quite easy. Because the military system, we always look to stay ahead of the curve with regard to compliance. We defined our energy performance indicators, which are nautical miles per meters cubed and meters cubed per patrol day. If anybody's a questioner, I'll be quite happy to take that afterwards. We implemented our energy action plan, our training and communication system. We continued and decided to train all engineers in the Certified Energy Manager system. We've trained them to Certified Energy Auditor and Certified Measurement and Verification Professional. And we've also taken line staff and we've trained them into implementation of ISO 50001. Our communications methods are by a 3-monthly bulletin, and we have a notice board available for all our information is available on the notice board to staff. And we implemented the energy efficiency technology into our new ship build, the first of which was delivered last May. So the checking is no different to any other company monitoring and reporting on the energy performance indicators. This doesn't come out very well, but it basically defines our energy usage reduction over the last since 2008. A drop basically from 100 gigawatt hours down to approximately 60 gigawatt hours at the moment. Energy figures are reviewed on a monthly, quarterly and annual basis. Energy audits are carried out on the significant energy users. There's an ongoing review of our legal and other compliance, as in the marine space it's changing radically, and it's formally reviewed once a year and updated. We're currently reviewing our new ship performance versus predicted performance. We had predicted an energy reduction on the previous fleet of ships, previous class of ships, of 75%. However, the new ship on the block has been used for every function around the country, so its energy performance has gone down. But once it settles down, we should have a better idea of where we stand. So we look for about a year's data to see where the new ship performance is operating relative to the predicted performance. So the acting is approving our measurement and recording. A lot of our recording is manual recording. We are now implementing more automated systems to give, I suppose, real-time data back to the ship's drivers. So to allow them to make real-time energy efficient decisions with regard to driving of the ships. Our newer ships, we're implementing technology upgrades such as rotary stabilizer systems to enable the ship to travel at slower speeds in the rougher seas. The older ships are nearing the end of their lifespan. We have very little investment in technology with regard to these ships. However, we are implementing plans for the next generation of ships if the government does decide to fund it, and there is a good likelihood that these may be fully electric propulsion. And with the reduction in marine gas oil usage, other SEUs such as electrical and thermal are rising in more and more importance. So with the reduction of marine gas oil, we're increasing our focus on these other SEUs. So the result of it is that we now have an energy efficient system, an energy efficiency system, energy management system that is now a component of what we do. It's integrated into the organisation, as I showed you with the command structure. It's not a bolt-on. And it's added a layer of understanding between policy, operations, support and training. We've achieved external recognition, but most importantly, we've achieved significant reductions in financial outlay, energy used, and more importantly, going into the future, although it wasn't a huge I suppose to put it, consideration initially, is with European directives on marine emissions within port coming along the lines, we find ourselves that we're well ahead of the curve. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attendance at this late time of the day.
Thank you very much indeed. Two very interesting presentations. Now our final speaker is going to be part of a panel. Ray from Microsoft. I don't know, maybe the best way to do it is let you introduce yourself, but before you do, I'll just ask, we said we'd have someone from SCAI. Declan Meany unfortunately had to leave us. He was stepping into John's shoes, so I did a quick search amongst the exhibitors and various experts in the room and had a look for the longest serving agreement support manager that I could find. So if I could just call on Richard Morrison of Optian to step into SCAI's shoes for the last 15 minutes or so, please, just in case there's any questions that arise. Thanks very much. So, Microsoft are not making a presentation, but as I think we saw from the show of hands earlier, virtually every business, there's one here for you, Richard. Here. Okay. There's virtually every business has an increasing amount of IT, data centers, comms, etc. And a lot of these, as was the point that was made earlier by some of the other speakers, the cooling load is one of the most significant users associated with IT. And I think Ray is the facilities manager at Microsoft, and Microsoft have quite a significant portion of it, I believe, ambient cooling in their new data center. So I think it's great that you're here, Ray, and I'm delighted that you're prepared to take questions on behalf of many energy managers who are dealing with IT teams who feel that they must have 16 degrees or even, I think, 12 degrees, as mentioned earlier. Maybe tell us a little bit about Microsoft and your new data center and your own role there, please.
Hi everyone, Ray McNally is my name. I work for a part of Microsoft called GFS. That's Global Foundation Services, and we build data centres. We have a large data centre here in Ireland. Thank you. And that data centre it's all about free cooling. So one of the reasons the DC was built here was to take advantage of changes in technology. Traditionally, we operated our data centres at 21 degrees, and we were looking for very tight humidity bands. And these days, everything has been opened up a lot more. The temperature and humidity brackets have been expanded a lot, which allows us to move away from traditional DX type cooling. So what we found in our build here in Ireland was the changes in design left us with a lot to learn as an operations team. We had very large colos, and we had a very large computer rooms full of equipment and full of the latest state-of-the-art air handling systems. And as operators, we had some catching up to do with that technology. So we started to look at it, and we started to learn about it, and we found there was a lot of knowledge within our teams, and we found that the application of the knowledge in operating the data center there was a learning curve that went with it. It took some amount of time for us to optimize what we do in the data center, but what we also found was that it's within this growing industry, there's a lot of change in staff, and a lot of people are moving in constantly changing direction. So we went to look for a standard which we could effectively globalise, or we could bring with us from Ireland, and we could take it to the other data centres we're building in Europe and in fact around the world. And ISO was the chosen programme for that. So, like some other speakers have talked about today, we didn't want to take on another monster and create an auditing system and create lots and lots of paperwork for ourselves. We wanted to use the systems that we already had within the data center. We were lucky enough to have some very good metering and some very good technology. So for us, ISO was about implementing a standard that we could keep, and knowing that no matter what happened within our organisation, that standard was there to make sure that the efficiencies that were gained and were not lost again. So we set ourselves a 12-month target. We weren't in any hurry trying to achieve the standard, but we set a 12-month target for ourselves, and we took our time really in developing it. I've heard other people talk about doing it in 2-3 months today, and that seems quite impressive from the amount of work that we had to do. But I have to say, my experience of implementing the standard has been it's been a journey, and it's been a journey where all the way along we were learning all the time, and we were finding, even where we thought we had a lot of the answers and we had a lot of the fixes already there, the standard continues to force you to poke yourself. It continues to make you ask questions about how you're doing and where's the next opportunity. How can you constantly streamline this system? And I think after now having the standard in we've had it for about 6 months, it's become part of what we do on a daily, weekly basis, and it's actually working quite well for us. The next place we're going to go with it, hopefully, is to try and get our American cousins to learn a little bit more about it, and to try and take it outside Ireland, because the question we're starting to ask ourselves, and I'm not sure if anybody has talked about it, but it's the cost of power here in Ireland. With the data centres, they're using a heck of a lot of power, and I'm sure it's the same for any business here. It's the cost of power. No matter how far you optimise it, that's about the best you can do. But it's a question we're now asking ourselves around the competitivity of the cost of the kilowatt hours here in Ireland, and what else we can do about that. So again, the standard is taking us in different directions and forcing us to ask questions of ourselves, how we do business and how we do business in the country.
Very good. Thanks very much indeed, Ray. So just throw it open to the floor there, just questions. You have real life data center manager here, so if you want to throw any IT related questions based on. Thank you. Sorry, Ronan. Cheers. Down the back. Just while we're waiting there, I got one question in, a question in relation to the development of IS399, but it's anonymous. If that person could approach me afterwards, I'll take their contact details and we get an answer to that question. So just to park that one. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Paul Dempsey, Premium Power. We're a power engineering consultancy, and we deal a lot with mission critical facilities and clients up and down the country. And I'd just like to compliment the speakers this afternoon. They all had very interesting and stimulating talks. I'd like to direct my question at Tony there from Bosch and Long. Just, Tony, regarding all the energies focused on energy reduction and energy management, do you think that sometimes reliability in systems is overlooked? And do you think that things like power quality and energy management can go hand in hand.
Should be on there if you turn this on. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard from our point of view because probably not like yourselves, we're a 24/7 operation. So power quality is, I know the facilities guys are looking at that constantly. From their point of view, we're trying to structure it in a way that we're trying to not bite off too much at any one time. We're at a place now where, I go back to what Ray said, it's all about energy efficiency now rather than usage. We are where we are with the amount of usage we can get per unit. So it's really to make more efficiency of what we're doing with it at the minute. But yeah, power quality is an issue for the guys at the minute, and I know they have some programs in the background that they're working on at present, right? Unless you want to do it.
I'm not sure I could add anything to that. I can tell you from what I was talking about with the free cooling and the changing in the parameters of how we operate the data centres, moving away from strict bans on temperature, humidity. Power quality is something that we probably over-designed, and you probably don't want to hear this, but it's probably another area that we'll go and have a look at in terms of, are we over-engineering? We've run these servers effectively in outdoor areas. We've hit them with just about everything in terms of power quality, and what we're starting to ask ourselves is, again, are we overdoing it? From an efficiency point of view, there are probably areas within power quality which can be dialed down to again reduce your efficiency or increase your efficiency and get a better end result, target exactly what you need, as opposed to over-engineering the situation.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. More questions? Yeah, go ahead. Thanks, Ronan.
How are you getting on? Yeah, it's a question really regarding the server rooms.
And your name and organisation?
Yeah, sorry, Gerard Fitzgerald from Irish Water. And I'm really wondering, you were able to move away from the tight bands, and I was wondering, was that really from an improvement in technology, or was it a case you understood the effect of high humidity controls and lower temperatures on the equipment, or was it solely driven by new technology?
I think it's a combination of lots of people thinking along the same lines and thinking along the energy lines. As we get more experience of the equipment we're working with, and as we put it through more rigorous testing, we're finding out that it's a lot harder than we thought it was 5 or 10 years ago, and that's what's allowing us to change the way we do business. We operate to what's called the ASHRAE guidelines, and that's an American standard. There are equivalents around the European Code of Conduct for data centers bills, but pretty much all manufacturers nowadays are building these guidelines. So anybody operating a data center at 21 degrees plus or minus 2 or 40-60 humidity is overworking it. There's a lot more room to expand.
Okay, I think, yeah, sorry, one more there, just down the back. Just in terms of how robust this equipment is, we ran a public sector ICT working group a few years back for SCAI, and the question was asked of some of the suppliers, and these suppliers will have to remain nameless, just how hot can we run it? And one of the answers that was given by the supplier was, well, our alarms go off at 40 degrees C. That's a bit uncomfortable for working in, though. Sorry.
Frank Call from Cyrus. Just in terms of data centre, obviously the use of free cooling is distinct from traditional methods. There's an increased cost, obviously, in terms of air handling and air quality issues, filtration and so on. How significant is that in relation to how we used to do it previously?
I would argue the opposite. I would say the cost is reduced. We're back to a simple air handling unit. We're not doing any adiabatic cooling, and we simply call it a fan in a box. That's how we do our cooling. There's a filtration system, obviously, but there is no more DX cooling. So the cost of the AHUs, depending on how you're purchasing them, we're purchasing large scale, and the cost of that is significantly reduced as opposed to doing a DX system.
Okay, just in terms of running costs and filtration, air change rates are obviously more significant than they used to be. in terms of delivering the cooling, obviously, filtration then would be a bigger cost in terms of running costs and maintenance. That's kind of really the question.
Yeah, filtration is certainly a cost at the scale our company are doing it, but again, you're consistently looking for efficiencies. We're challenging the filter manufacturers to consider air efficiency within the filters, reducing your resistance and reducing your costs as well as that. But we have moved away, we've changed it as the way we design the free air cooling. We've moved away from pressure and we've moved towards volume. We on the operations side, through schemes like we're talking about today, we still think it's over-engineered and we still think there's a lot more room to move back on the volume. We could see data centres in the future which don't have air handling units. We could see them effectively moving towards free air cooling without the need for mechanical systems.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe just to answer the question from the anonymous texter, Richard was asking me about the question there. It was regards to how the new IS 393 is being written, and without going too much into the guidelines, the answer to your question is yes. So if you'd like to approach us later for more details, I'd be happy to elaborate. So folks, at this stage we're just pulling things together. I hope you've enjoyed the day and found it very informative, and I hope you'll find that when you get back to base you can implement ISO 50001 in a more effective manner. If there's any other questions or topics people would like to bring up, I believe we'll be doing some interaction when the presentations are distributed. So as you get them, right, you will be able to interact further with all of the speakers. And I'd like to say thank you very much to all the speakers. I think, Ron, is there anything else I need to add in terms of the presentations, etc., just before I bring things to a close?
No, Conor, I think you've pretty much covered everything. As Conor pointed out, we've a videographer in the room, and all the presentations will be made available where you'll be able to interact on a secure website directly with the presenters. So within the next 4 to 5 days, we should have that available to you.
Okay. So to bring things to matter close, we covered an enormous amount of ground, so it's not possible to summarise it all in a couple of minutes, but what I would say is that it's been very interesting to see towards the end of the day some of the points that we made at the start about, energy efficiency helps to secure jobs. I think Tony's given us a great example of, a really concrete manner here locally where ISO 50001 has helped them to secure the jobs down in Waterford. I think from the point of view of Microsoft, and virtually everyone uses ICT. You've heard there from really major data centre that it's possible to cool in very creative ways that are much more energy efficient than what we're used to, depending on obviously the circumstances that you're in. And I was really, as you all make your way home, right, and you're looking at your different modes of transport, to be able to see what the Naval Service has done in some very, very challenging circumstances in terms of reducing their diesel usage in an operational environment that's way, way, way beyond anything any of us have to experience on a day-to-day basis. So, folks, just bringing matters to a close. Look forward to your comments online. Thank you all very much indeed for your interaction, and a safe journey home. Thank you very much indeed.